Have you ever gotten really into a piece of media? Maybe it's a video game, or a book, or a movie. You experienced it, you absolutely loved it, and it's taken over your mind so completely that all you want to do right now is spend hours reading up on all the lore of that thing, finding try-hard YouTubers talking about that thing, and talking about it with other fans online. That last one is where things usually don't go so great. It's not that fandoms are inherently a bad thing. They're kind of inevitable, especially today. People are going to want to talk about their favorite media online because who doesn't? Who doesn't see someone else sharing the exact same interests as them and feel a bit of a thrill, even validation, that someone else out there thinks your dorky little pastime is cool? When you start to like a thing so much that you invest time and energy into it, you choose to put a piece of yourself in that thing. And if you see something that doesn't 100% align with your beliefs or opinions about that thing, you feel personally attacked. This is sort of in line with the kind of behavior you see from fans of video game and movie franchises online. Take for example the quote-unquote anti-woke mobs that showered the non-white actors in the Rings of Power TV show with sickening racism and threats. Or the Last of Us fans who raised absolute hell regarding a certain golf-related incident in The Last of Us Part 2. Specifically with video games, I really do feel like there's been an increased hostility from fans towards game developers. Most recently, after the big GTA 6 leak, fans started absolutely dunking on the test footage shared by the hacker, saying the game was an unfinished mess and calling Rockstar devs lazy and incompetent, among other less savory things. Now, I hope I don't have to tell you that yes, test footage showing an early build of the game is, by definition, an unfinished product. But more importantly, it underscores how readily these fanboy armies assume the absolute worst about a piece of media and, to top it off, say insanely mean things to the developers on Twitter. Not to mention the death threats. An argument can be made that these aren't just fans, but rage-baiting trolls who want to see those engagement numbers go up, no matter whether that engagement is good or bad. Hell, it's not like the algorithm gives a damn. Tribalism isn't new to society, of course. We've had it in religion and politics since literally forever. This is a bit of a tangent, but bear with me. People like associating themselves with a particular figurehead or a powerful name because, life's complicated as it is. You gotta earn a living while balancing a social life, taxes, family responsibilities, taxes. It makes things so much easier if you have something outside of this you can rely on for emotional support. Something that doesn't keep changing on a daily basis. For most of history, that was religion. People could relinquish some of their emotional baggage onto an omnipotent guy in the sky who they hoped would look out for them. But religion just isn't as culturally dominant anymore. There's a million reasons for this that I obviously won't get into here, but for many of us, it's been replaced in large part by brands. Franchises and brands have never seen the sort of almost religious fervor from millions of fans that they do today. Instead of Catholics versus Protestants, you have Xbox versus Sony. Instead of Vishnu versus Shiva, you have Apple versus Android. Especially in mass media like film and video games, the holy grail for any studio is achieving Marvel or Call of Duty levels of popularity and rabid followership. Because once you got them hooked, they're basically guaranteed money every time you release a new movie or game. But there's a key difference between actual religion and fandom, where in the former you kinda just shut up and do what you're told because what are you gonna do, question God? But media franchises are very human. Game studios are bound to do something you don't like, except now you have a direct line of communication to them. But even yelling at a giant faceless corporation isn't quite as satisfying, is it? No, that's when you gotta pull out the big guns. That's when you decide to collectively destroy every last ounce of passion a game developer has for their job. Like this. It's pretty depressing, honestly, but par for the course on Twitter and in general, fan discourse online. It's like that running joke. No one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. Yeah, it is a joke, but there's more to it than that. I do get where a lot of this criticism comes from because I myself am a fan of several video games, movies and TV shows. As someone who follows these media more ardently than the average person, I, as a fan, am bound to have emotional reactions to what I see and uphold these franchises to a higher standard than anyone else. But the problem really gets bad when fans start making it more about themselves than the media they're talking about. I'll give you an example I saw firsthand. I'm not really the type of person who enjoys difficult games, which is why I've never really tried Dark Souls games. But then Elden Ring released, and I'm a sucker for that sweet non-Ubisoft open world design. And I loved it. Yes, the game was difficult, and hell yes, it was super satisfying when I beat a tough boss. But would I have chosen an easy mode if the game had one? In a heartbeat. I've read a million different arguments from fans about why From Software games shouldn't have an easy mode, and nothing, and I mean nothing, has come close to convincing me that an optional easy mode wouldn't make these games better and more accessible for gamers who don't have the patience to get good. Now with Elden Ring reaching more players than ever before, the discussion reached a fever pitch. And the more I saw discussions online, the more I started to realize that for some hardcore Souls-like fans, the conversation was really about them and not the actual game. Because how else can you show people you're a real man except beating Melania with a wooden stick, no magic, no spirit summons, fat rolling only, and then shaming new players who, God forbid, use Mimic Tier to beat a boss? On some level, it seems like these people are using the game as a sort of digital proxy for real life, which means any in-game achievements would translate, at least in their minds, to real-world accomplishments. So when a casual gamer is able to beat the same boss with maybe a little help, it feels like an invalidation of all the effort they put to get the same result. A lot of people rely on the escapism and power fantasy of media and begin to associate their deepest personal desires and attachments with the objects of their fandom. They form this terribly one-sided parasocial relationship, one where the brand is in complete control and gets paid for the privilege. Because let's not forget, these brands they're defending are businesses that are in it for the money, not to satisfy their fans' every whim and fancy. Nintendo isn't going to give you special treatment because they saw you defending Mario 3D All-Stars on Reddit. Some of us are so absorbed in our own devotion that the idea of being a fan in itself becomes much more powerful than the media it's supposed to idolize. It becomes a mutated version of itself that ends up being toxic to both the franchise and to the fans themselves. In these online exchanges, it's usually the artists who stand to lose the most. They're the ones working 70-hour work weeks, enduring sometimes awful exploitation, and still creating these outstanding works of art for all of us to enjoy. Because they care. But they often serve as the cannon fodder for fan backlash when things go wrong. Things they likely didn't have control over. Like when CD Projekt Red decided to release Cyberpunk a year early, and leadership just pretended they didn't know how unfinished it was. The people who got death threats from fans were the developers, not the C-suite executives. Of course, most fans you see online are not entitled douchebags whose sole purpose for existence is to make Twitter a Nazi breeding ground. But the culture of fandoms needs to change. I keep going back to this quote by Roger Ebert I read recently. A lot of fans are basically fans of fandom itself. It's all about them. They have mastered the Star Wars or Star Trek universes or whatever, but their objects of veneration are useful mainly as a backdrop to their own devotion. Anyone who would camp out in a tent on the sidewalk for weeks in order to be the first in line for a movie is more into camping on the sidewalk than movies. Maybe it's time for us to get a hobby away from our hobbies. It's not such a bad thing to step outside once in a while. Go for a walk, get some sunlight, and maybe, just maybe, touch some grass. Thanks so much for watching Next Level Narrative. If you like this video, a like and subscribe would be super appreciated. This is your host, Anish, signing out.